Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chai Talk with Wajatli for the Left Hook Substack, where I interview a subject matter expert who's far smarter than me to break down one or more than one question in 30 minutes or less. And today I have a repeat guest, Sarah Kendzior. Yay! One day, if once she makes 5 appearances, I will give her a mug. But
Mm.
this is her second appearance. She's the author of They Knew, Hiding in Plain Sight, and The View from Flyover Country. On April 1st, no joke, she has a new book, The Last American Road Trip, where she takes her family to discover America before it is violently eroded and ripped away by the Broligarchy. She also writes a fantastic Substack at Sarah Kendzior, and I have asked her to come break down this one hopeful question: how did the Broligarchy conquer America? And Sarah, I was also going to ask you another question. Is this the end of American democracy? But I'm going to stick with how did the Broligarchy conquer America? Because we're recording this a day after I witnessed the White House try to sell Tesla cars from the White House lawn with Donald Trump, the president, reading literally a script like a Tesla salesman. And then Sean Hannity on Fox, to help the Tesla sales, also tried to hawk Tesla. And Donald Trump also said that he would take protests against Tesla dealerships as acts of domestic terrorism. And speak about domestic terrorism, as we're recording this on a Wednesday, about 10 minutes ago, it was just revealed that the State Department, the United States government, has zero evidence against Mahmoud Khalil, the Palestinian activist who has been detained, a green card holder who they want deported. And it was just reported that it's only because Marco Rubio doesn't like him and wants him to leave. So, with all that, how did the Broligarchy conquer America, and why didn't we stop it? I gave you the first salvo.
Yeah, I mean, the Broligarchy is just the latest manifestation of something that has been eating away at this country for our entire lifetimes. As children of the Reagan era. I have been warning of this scenario, as I think everyone knows, for a very long time, and pointing out that what we're dealing with is the merger of transnational organized crime, mafia crime, often euphemistically called white collar crime, state corruption, and corporate crime. And I think that the insertion of Elon Musk into the Trump administration, being such a prominent figure, is just kind of a new spin on the old problem, which is really accountability, corruption, and refusal to enforce accountability for blatantly corrupt acts. And one of the most disappointing aspects of this, one that I think people, they just want to forget that this happened and look the other way, but we need to dig into it, is that there was 4 years after Trump's first term, was full of crimes, obstruction of justice, abuse of the pardon power, fomenting a coup, and they were unpunished. And the only way that Trump was not going to come back and finish this job is if you were going to face meaningful consequences, not just sort of little indictments on small crimes, but really digging deep into the roots of his rise, his ties with transnational criminal groups since the late 1970s, where the DOJ started investigating him in 1973 and then stopped, and then of course all the people in his fold. Because this was never just about Trump. It's about a network. And Trump, throughout his life, has associated himself with a variety of corrupt or criminal networks. And the Silicon Valley network, this technocracy, which I think
Yeah.
is exceedingly dangerous, possibly the most dangerous network he's ever been able to associate himself with, is the latest one. And the reason it's so dangerous is because we can't avoid it. And everything you just told me about the Tesla sales and Fox News, like I didn't know any of that. I mean, I vaguely knew it, but I could get through my day without knowing it. It doesn't directly affect me, but I can't get through my day without using a smartphone. I can't have this conversation with you without talking over Zoom or some other technological device. I'm bound to Gmail. I'm bound to a lot of things that I don't like to be. And as much as I try to live like a Luddite, I can't, which means I cannot escape this surveillance state. I cannot escape Trump and Musk and the rest of them using their powers to combine, technological dominance with an utter erosion of freedom and rights. And we're seeing this now in the surveillance of protests and the attempts to deport people who are citizens or who have green cards or who have every right to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about how this is the latest manifestation and how the technocracy is the most dangerous aspect of it. But let's just break it down. Elon Musk gives $290 million to the Trump campaign. Steve Bannon, before he turns on Elon Musk for liking H-1B visas, openly said on his war room that without Elon Musk, Trump doesn't become president. Trump thanks Elon Musk, which I still think is really weird. Why no one like looks into it for like Pennsylvania and the voting machines, and like everyone's like, oh, that's an odd throwaway comment. Elon Musk makes his money thanks to the South African Broligarchy, which includes Peter Thiel of Palantir and PayPal. David Sachs, another South African Broligarch who's a buddy of all these guys, is now the head of AI and crypto. And Donald Trump apparently has made his money now in the meme coin. And so it seems like it's the like you said, the mix of all the existing problems of major money, corporate money, dark money, no accountability, but on steroids. But you did say something about Democrats, and I want to talk about the failure of Democrats as well. 2 points. Uh, it goes back, I think, even Sarah, to Obama. Can you talk to us about how these Democrats actually relied upon Silicon Valley money and kind of bolstered it, enabled it, kind of gave it its sheen, which allowed it to come and now basically destroy us?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to go through the campaign donations of the Democrats and the Republicans and see the overlap, because you'll see it in a few places. You see hedge funds, you see APAC, and you see Silicon Valley. And there's been a reluctance to confront this. I think because, kind of somewhat understandably, in the early days of the internet, everyone was excited about it. Everyone thought that the problem of human rights was a problem of lack of awareness and an inability of people who are subject to oppressive regimes to be able to speak out. And I actually did my PhD about this. I did this about exiles and refugees, dissidents from Uzbekistan who finally had the power of the internet, were starting up blogs, were exposing state crimes, corruption, and nothing happened. The only way they got rid of their dictator was because he died. And then a new dictator, who was not quite as bad, but pretty bad, is now still there. That was 10 years ago. So, that illusion that, technology is a naturally democratizing force, that it will improve people's lives, it was hard for people to shake that. And I don't think they fully grasped the negative aspects of it, the ability of it to act as a surveillance, thing, a better word, I think was clear. But the way in which it didn't just spread democratic ideals, but very easily could spread paranoia, distrust, right-wing movements, kind of fanaticism, really negative things, and trick people, deceive people through anonymity, through bot farms, through repetition. That was not clear, I think, until right before Trump took office, probably starting around 2014. Gamergate and other movements like that, I think, brought it to the fore. And certainly Bannon, Cambridge Analytica, all of these tech and surveillance corporations were heavily involved in that campaign. It's interesting in a way that they glom onto Trump because Trump is a career criminal, or I should say career criminal associate, so he doesn't use his excessive litigation tactic against us. Is notorious for not writing anything down, not keeping any records, not having anything for anybody to discover during discovery. That is the way that mafiosos typically behave. On the other hand, we have this giant trail of evidence of criminality through technology, but there's nobody willing to enforce it. In terms of what Obama and the rest of the Democrats were doing, I'm an independent. I wasn't particularly invested one way or the other in what the Democrats were doing. I just did not want George Bush to be the president. That was my main concern because I thought he was the worst of my lifetime. That since has been
we're the
topped.
same generation, Sarah. Yes, at that time we're like, it can't get worse, and we're like, oh.
Oh, it can.
Yes.
It definitely can. I think it's worth looking into all that again, but I'm more concerned on the Democratic end with their embrace of right-wing ideas, with the steady push of the Democrats towards the right. their embrace, in Harris's campaign of people like Dick Cheney, the great enemies of our youth. All of that's very disturbing, as is the fact that all these bad things that I quote unquote reveal about Trump are either things that he readily confesses himself on television or on social media, or are things that have been documented in books dating back to when I was about 4 years old. Books written by people like Wayne Barrett or David K. Johnston or others who were covering the mafia and Trump in the 1980s. So everybody has known the whole time, and this to me feels like a controlled demolition. And now they have the technology in order to carry it out at an accelerated speed to the benefit of not only the worst people in the United States, but the worst people worldwide, partners in Israel, Saudi Arabia, Russia, any dictatorship that wants to get on board and get a piece of this action. And honestly, it's not really a matter of nations. This is something I tried to emphasize in my previous books. These are individuals who have multiple passports, offshore accounts, digital currency. They want to replace the dollar with Bitcoin or other kinds of digital currency that they can control. So it's not the sort of old empire style of 20th century dictatorship. It is transnational organized crime mixed with technology. And when they talk about things like let's invade Canada, let's buy Greenland, it's just because they want to carve up those countries and dole them out to individual oligarchs and create little fiefdoms. It's not the sort of let's expand America and be all American, whatever kind of patriotic veneer that is put forward is a complete lie. It's just there to reassure his base. This is the most anti-American administration, but it is, led obviously by Trump and his cohort. It is abetted and enabled and made possible by the Democrats who fully knew this threat. They knew it as well as I did. They knew it as well as you did. And they have chosen to abet it and not stand up against it when they had the time and the opportunity and the support to do so. So that's just one last thing I want to emphasize is that the majority of this country does not want Trump or Musk. Musk is even less popular. It never has. When people come on saying half the country wants this,
Yeah,
it's
BS.
never true. Like half the country doesn't vote. Of the percent that votes, you've got a little less than half voting Republican. Of the percent voting Republican, a lot of them do it kind of reluctantly, mostly out of hatred for the Democratic Party, less so out of a fervent love for Donald Trump. He does have a hardcore base. That base does have a record of violence. I think that that's a problem we have to take seriously. It is not half the country. The majority doesn't want this. And so your other question you raised of is democracy dead? You have to look at the meaning of democracy, the literal, etymology of it. It's the power of the people. And so that's what people need to ask themselves is the power of the people dead? If our representative democracy is dead, which it may well be, then what does that leave for us to do as individuals, as communities, as neighbors and friends? We haven't relinquished our power or surrendered it. We're having it stolen from us and we're trying to take it back. And I think that there's always possibility in that regard to regain it more.
So we're mentioning how the Broligarchy took over and is essentially dismantling and selling democracy to the highest bidders, quid pro quo. The rise and the infusion of dark money, thanks to Citizens United. The fact that it's all gone on steroids, thanks to tech money, and the ascension of tech and the immersion of tech in our lives. The misinformation that spread as a result of these tech giants, essentially, literally, Elon Musk taking control of Twitter. You see Zuckerberg and Facebook. There was a data that showed that in the 2024 election, those people who had correct facts about crime, about immigration, about the economy, they went Harris, and those people had incorrect facts, they went Donald. We're living in a situation where people don't know, up from down, left from right, and are confused. And now the Department of Education is gutted and they want to keep us dumb. But I want to stick with this thread of accountability, or rather the lack of accountability, because you're right. We knew everything. Donald Trump's been a criminal his whole life. And yet finally, when there was some scrutiny, they're like, oh, look, the Trump organization, it's committing fraud. By the way, he still owes New York over 400 million. But then I was looking at it and I'm like, He's pretty bad criminal. He's been doing it in plain sight and just no one did anything, right? Trump University, Trump Charity. And then you talk about his first administration. And you mentioned the fact the numerous crimes, right? And the fact that he literally stole documents. Literally, he's a convicted criminal. Literally, he incited a violent insurrection. So before we move on to how other sectors or, if you will, institutions have failed us, talk to me about Merrick Garland and Biden. Why? Why did they slow walk this? A lot of people say no, they had to, it was procedural and you can't be like Donald Trump and you can't be like Kash Patel and, he did the right thing. I sit there and go, he was the wrong man for the job. And Joe Biden should have gotten the right person for the job and said, go get this mother effer. But that's just me, Sarah.
Yeah, I have an article called Servants of the Mafia State. It's free. It goes into Merrick Garland's history, why he was chosen, and what he did. The people defending Merrick Garland, the people who defended him and put up this vast propaganda apparatus, which I also break down in the article, they are enemies of democracy. They want a passive citizenry that will allow Donald Trump and his mafia cohort to take over this country, who will reassure people falsely to just wait, bide their time, dot the I's and, cross the T's in every word except for indict or convict. These people did enormous damage, but not as much, of course, as Merrick Garland himself. Merrick Garland was installed into his first position in the Clinton administration, DOJ, where he was there briefly by a woman named Jamie Gorelick, who is basically the Forrest Gump of 21st century crime, linked to, 9/11, the opioid epidemic, oil spills, like the sort of all around lawyer for the worst organizations and individuals in America. She also notably was Jared Kushner's lawyer. Jared and Ivanka's ethics lawyer. And she was the person who got Jared and Ivanka into the White House. Now, why would you want her lifelong best friend and mentee, somebody who, they brag about their close relationship, both of them having been taught, by the way, by Alan Dershowitz, Trump and Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, and another sort of person in that vein. Roy Cohn is another. Everyone's entitled to a rigorous defense, but there's a certain type of lawyer that just seems to seek out the worst possible cases and defend them in order to keep that corruption flowing. And she certainly fits this category. All you had to do was a really basic vetting of Merrick Garland to know how this was going to go. And by May and June, when he had not acted on January 6th, when he had not taken any action on that, it was very clear that he was going to take no action on Trump at all, and that he was there to run out the clock, which is Trump's long preferred strategy. Anyone who knows anything about Trump and his criminal history knows that he does that, and therefore it's necessary to quickly handle this. And also, I think, to change people's perception of what is legal, what is normal, what is moral. Because in the beginning, right after January 6th, the vast majority of this country wanted Trump to be unable to run for office, and most wanted him to be criminally charged. And that includes Republicans, that includes independents. This was not a partisan issue. This was a widely held belief. Over time, the lack of accountability for Trump's many crimes, but particularly that one, it caused a lot of Americans to doubt their own recollections of what happened. They thought, well, if he's not being arrested for it, it must be because the election really was stolen by Joe Biden. Joe Biden must really be guilty. Otherwise, Trump would be in prison and they would be acting with urgency because this would be sedition. And all those Republicans that backed him up, they clearly wouldn't be allowed to hold their position. Clearly, Nancy Pelosi would kick them out of their House seats because it would be sedition, like during the Civil War. Nothing was done. And you can look at polling over that year, over 2021, and watch Donald Trump's support rise and watch Joe Biden's diminish, and watch a lot of people go from thinking that January 6th was, a travesty to thinking that it was a merited act of attempting to have a democratic election by Donald Trump. And of course, they had Fox News and others breathing down their necks that this was the case. They had a propaganda barrage from the right. What makes me angry now is that there's basically no analysis of the individuals, these quote unquote legal experts, most of whom have no actual background in law or political history or anything. They're just kind of, drifters for hire, who spent an enormous amount of time, not just defending Garland and a very broken DOJ, but attacking viciously anyone who pointed out basic historical facts or correcting their lies. For example, they said Merrick Garland caught Timothy McVeigh. Like, this is something anyone who could just remember the year
Yeah, yeah.
1995, we know it's not true. They repeated it and repeated it and repeated it to the point that there's quite a lot of overlap between Trump's tactics, and you see them, for example, in QAnon, and this group. It merits further inquiry. There's enough in my article for people to pivot off of and look into. My point is that there are individuals who are beyond kind of partisan reckoning. They are just people here to, trash the US for hire, to make it weaker, to make us weaker as citizens. And then they use, legal apparatus to do this. They have lawyers that behave as fixers. We certainly have seen this in Trump's fold. Merrick Garland is one of those. Don't let the little meek facade fool you. It's down to, it's such a script that I was literally able to say what, Grayleak was going to say in an article about him 2 years in advance, down to the word choice, because it's so consistent over so many decades. So yeah, that was a long answer. It's better.
No, it was because I think it's important for people to understand that. Look, I don't say the Democrats are the same as Republicans, because Republicans literally are now an authoritarian cult in favor of a wannabe dictator that launched a violent insurrection. But nonetheless, it's the same incestuous circle, right?
Yes.
It's the, oh, let's drink rum and or gin, and let's talk about how I can help you and you can help me. And it's the same donor base that you mentioned, which is what we're seeing right now, where Democrats, for some strange reason, are censuring Al Green, a fellow Democrat who called out Donald Trump an act of resistance. 77-year-old man, and 10 Democrats are like, let's censure him and not the Republicans. They went with Republicans for the Lake and Riley Act. Just this brutal assault on undocumented immigrants simply for being charged with shoplifting. You seen Jared Moskowitz, another Democrat, yesterday, who come out and say, well, Mahmoud Khalil, yeah, he seems like maybe I don't know, student visa, even though he's a green card holder, and like Hamas, even though there's nothing. So you see this complicity, even now, this timidity by Democrats, and people are like, what's happening? And I'm glad you broke it down, how this is unfortunately what people don't like to realize, that there is a complicity here. And if you are, I would say civility in this day and age is complicity. They have much more anger towards pro-Palestinian protesters than it seems like insurrectionists and liars and the Donald Trump era. And speaking about people who are promoting the lie, there's another aspect of this that we have to talk about, is media complicity. Can you talk about corporate media and I'm going to use the word, it's complicity in lack of accountability, in whitewashing these crimes, and in mainstreaming these bad faith players who are known to be bad faith, but now are in the White House?
Yeah, we've seen the media just absolutely plummet. And it was in 2022 that I knew Trump was returning, in part because I was watching this mass cutting of the mainstream media that had nothing to do with profitability, had nothing to do with what people wanted to see or learn about. A Trump scandal or crime, they say Trump's connection to Jeffrey Epstein or something like that, actually brings in quite a lot of attention. But they were moving away from all of that. That was the year Musk took over Twitter. It was the year Zaslav took over HBO. You were seeing, American institutions that are generally pretty well liked. I bring up HBO for a reason, because it has this very positive image, being kind of torn apart, and these individuals, these sort of oligarch-like figures, saying, no, this is going to have a political purpose. This is not even about making money. We're just going to throw away whole movies because, they star, Black people, or were created by people who aren't white. Saw a real hard
Bad Girl.
turn, I
They,
think.
they took a write off on Bad Girl.
Exactly. Yeah, there are numerous examples of that. There's a hard right-wing turn, a hard pro-Israeli turn in 2023, following October 7th, but one that, would take people who were not, praising Hamas in any way, but simply were criticizing, what was a genocide of children, attacks on innocent civilians in Gaza as a result of the horrific attack on Israelis, and then putting them into this terrorist category. And you saw firings and guttings and people losing their job for no particular reason. And now I think it's just reached a full fever pitch. I had lost faith in the media long ago, but they make it very clear, like on MSNBC, when they just do this mass sweeping away of all the anchors, who aren't white and who also, I think, were the ones most likely to report about Trump's financial crimes, the ones most likely to follow the money. That was also something happening in 2022. I was watching major newspapers laying off their reporters who were the best versed in financial corruption. And I was thinking, something even worse than what we have now is coming down. They're getting the landscape ready. I mean, Trump did this the first time, not Trump unilaterally, but his network did this the first time in 2024, 2014, 2015. They kind of seed that field. So by the time that he's actually like in the ring, there's hardly any people able to bring the truth to a general audience. Folks like me that have written bestsellers about him exposing his crimes get banned from the media. I fully expected that to happen. There are also numerous attempts to try to remove my work from circulation.
And then also Bezos. I mean, real quick example, Jeff
yes.
Bezos, tech billionaire, takes over the Washington Post. And the Washington Post, as of now, is just being gutted. Ruth Marcus, longtime columnist, just quit this week because a piece she had talking about Jeff Bezos and his editorial constraints was spiked by Will Lewis, the CEO. And she's like, I'm out. And then the cartoonist also, if you remember, showing the Broligarchy giving Donald Trump the money, they spiked her cartoon, so she's out. So that's case in point right now as that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, these aren't real newspapers in a lot of ways. I mean, there are still good people working at them on an individual level. They often have expressed themselves online that their best work has been censored, or parts of it were chopped up, or headlines were made to create a different image of what the actual article was meant to say. But we've lost a lot. I used to kind of, make fun of some of these outlets, but, Vice, BuzzFeed News, Gawker, all of them, they did a lot of good in terms of exposing very bad people. This is
Yeah,
something they're flawless
Gawker did.
outlets.
I just talked to someone. I mean, this is the second time Gawker's made an appearance on the Left Hook in 1 week, not coordinated, but talking about like the work they did on Teal.
Right. Well, and in 2015, in anticipation of Trump's campaign, that was when they acted, with that lawsuit, and Gawker went out of business, and notably, the Epstein Black Book and other documents that Gawker had brought to the fore went with it. And so between that and AI and the, enshittification, as Cory Doctorow says, of search engines, it is very hard for people to find any information. I was able to write exposés about Trump because so much was in the public domain. I could very easily access archives. But, another problem, and this began in 2021, is paywalls. You suddenly had all of these outlets that were free putting up paywalls. So all you could see is a headline or a little piece of decontextualized, sentences floating around. And then on the other hand, on the right wing side, you had free information. You
Yep.
had Fox News and the New York Post and all of this stuff just there for the taking. And then also, memes and YouTube and podcasts. And it created false memories, I think. I think especially because of COVID,
Yep.
2020 was a very traumatic time for people, and 2021 and 2022. And when they would go back to try to research, what happened with this event or that event, how did we get to this point? They are now unable to do that without paying quite a lot of money. And then, of course, you have inflation at the same time, making subscriptions one of the most likely things for people to cancel because they think, well, that's not something I need to survive. I need to focus on food and shelter and things like that. So all
Basic
of that,
stuff.
it adds up to a very predictable disaster that the Democrats, had they wanted to, could have easily countered, by, I don't know, like just making their message more out in the open, not dodging questions about policy, as both Biden and Harris routinely did. They needed to do something to counter, what was a system that, I don't want a system where like the state decides whether we have a paywall in our media. I don't want a system where the state decides anything about our media. And this is clearly the system that Trump wants to put in place. And it's extremely dangerous. But we have faced a great loss, and this all comes on top of erosion of media that has been going on for decades, especially since 2008 and the global financial collapse, when local media was gutted. And I live in a state, I live in Missouri, that people often think is this real bastion of Trump support. And it's not. It's a bastion of dark money and gerrymandering and basically no media. St. Louis lost one of its few remaining
Yep.
newspapers just this year. And so people really struggle to get basic information about what the representatives are doing. And if you're in a rural area, God help you. You generally have no newspaper, and no one is covering your region. No one is telling you what's going on. And when you do hear what's going on, it's coming from, memes or cable news or whatever you can access from where you are. And a lot of people at that point just sort of shrug and say, no one gives a shit about me. Why should I give a shit about them? They either don't vote or they're frustrated by the total inattention to real, decreases in the in the ease of living, the loss of hospitals, schools, libraries, things like that. That's what Missouri has faced, and we don't really see anybody stepping up, at least in terms of elected officials, and paying attention to that. And on the rare occasion we get someone like that, like with Cori Bush, criticize her however you want. I do think she stood up for St. Louis. I think she stood up for Missouri. There is an effort funded by the Republicans in AIPAC to oust her that is then backed up by the Democratic Party, which is supposed to support her as the incumbent. And so I feel like I don't have any representation because the most expensive race in the history of my district was just held. And it was almost entirely funded by AIPAC for Wesley Bell. And I believe he serves those donors more than he serves the people of St. Louis. So when people say to me, oh, just vote or, focus more on elections, I'm like, why? We don't have any control, over anything going on anymore. Like, it is so corrupt. It is so hyper financed by people who have billions of dollars. Like, we are at an impasse. We have to find other ways of fighting back and of protecting each other, because clearly none of these individuals have our interests at heart.
I know you hate this question because it's the hope question, but in the final minute, you talked about fighting back. So many people can be hearing this right now and saying it's over. Like, we're outnumbered, we're outgunned. I don't have money like Musk. I don't have Twitter. I don't have a super PAC. And you have a new book coming out where you try your best to show your family, your kids especially in America, that's barely hanging on before it's completely removed. What can people do to fight back? Because we at least have the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is appreciating what we have, understanding what we have, and working locally to protect it. Or if you have some kind of expertise on a particular issue, climate change, environmentalism, for example, like, work on that. Put your focus where you're most likely to succeed. And honestly, just stop with the cruelty. That's something that I've really seen just an exponential rise in the last 4 years since COVID. You see people laughing at people's death, laughing at people's misfortune, labeling or writing off whole states or whole regions, including mine, because of this misperception that we are all MAGA folk over here. It's exactly what the Republican Party wants you to do. And that's not me hypothesizing. Like, Josh Hawley explicitly said that their goal is to try to create a situation where all the quote unquote liberals are in one place so that they are easier to manage and so that they're more easily to break up this country. We are stronger as a united country. That means we need to look at things honestly. And usually the honest look is something that's complicated. People don't fit neatly into little boxes. And the honest look means you need to stand up for the people most vulnerable, most likely historically to be targeted. I don't think it's coincidental that we're seeing, these targeting of Palestinian activists. We're seeing targeting of civil rights causes. That's always been the story of this country. And so just use common sense and realize, we are in it together. We have far less money, but far more people. And if we just give each other a little bit of grace, a little bit of benefit of the doubt, instead of giving these horrible corrupt officials the benefit of the doubt, which doesn't make any sense, then I think we might succeed at least holding it down, slowing it down, putting some sand in the gears. It's not going to be easy, but it's what we need to do. It's just, this is a situation we're in. So, you just fight and you fight and you fight. And that's kind of try to enjoy yourself while you're fighting. Try to make some friends while you're fighting. It's not
It,
always
it's
an
it's a
uphill climb.
long walk. It's a long road. Sarah, please shamelessly promote yourself and your book.
I will. I will continue to do that with no apology.
No, I'm saying right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, everybody. Buy my book. It's called The Last American Road Trip. It's not as dark as my previous book. It's previous books. It's a kind of National Lampoon Family Vacation meets Mad Max kind of vibe. And you'll learn a lot about this country and all of the beautiful and strange and interesting attractions. For those who like you for my political stuff, we do visit many state crimes, like where the Iran-Contra drug smuggling happened. I, as a good mother in America, took my children to see that. So there's really just a dazzling array of things in the Last American Road Trip. So pre-order today.
Children, here's some candy. And by the way, let me tell you about Oliver North.
Oh, they know all about it. Those
Of
poor
course they
kids.
do. And also, Sarah has a wonderful Substack. I will link to it and her previous books, which unfortunately, sadly, tragically called us all out years in advance, but now we're living it. So she is a modern day Cassandra, but hopefully a Cassandra who gets some desserts and is able to eat and enjoy her family. And maybe some people listen to her. I know I do. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, as always, be kind, be good, take care of yourselves, and please, oh please, don't be a fascist. Until next time, this has been The Left Hook with Wajahat Ali. Take care.